What's up, everyone? So I'm here with Susan Storm, and today we are going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of typology. Let's get it. So, one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about this is because I believe that Susan and I are really, at heart, we love typology. We love, the understanding of the human mind, Jung, all of that. But Susan, who has an amazing blog site, if you do not know about it, psychologyjunkie.com. For those of you who might not be familiar with her, where have you been, like under a rock? She also has a YouTube channel, which you guys should check out soon. But anyway, we'll get more to that later. Susan knows so much about type. She's read like a lot of the books and everything. And I feel like she has enough information to where you could have like more of an objective look, which I know you'll only be sharing your opinion, but she'll know how to like state where we should apply typology versus where it's like, actually, Susan will always like drop some NT stuff. Susan was someone who originally identified as an INFJ and now actually identifies more as like ENTJ as her best fit type and is not the stereotypical ENTJ in that set. And she mentioned so many things like, well, actually, like when it comes to the male brain versus the female brain, or like this study actually shows this, or like actually all children are like that. So a lot of things that Susan says, it's interesting to me because she still values typology, whereas like you'll see certain people who they'll love typology at first and they'll like learn about all the types and they might even like overuse it, and the next thing you know, it's like they've become enlightened and it's like, oh yeah, typology is trash and there's no value here, we're just all human beings, and they toss it and it's like they're rejecting it completely. And it seems like you found a sweet spot where it's like, I know, and I'm continuing to learn where we should apply typology and where it's like, no, this is actually just like, stuff that has to do with the brain and science and all of that. So I want to know a lot of the things that, I'm not putting you on the spot, but things that just come to mind right away that have already like annoyed you with type. Like, well, I guess first, like, where do you see typology actually having been helpful in your life? And then from there, it's like, but when it comes to this, when it comes to that, I see people saying this. And it's like, in my head, I'm actually like, well, the Abdullah Bangada, like, whatever that is, it's like this. Nerd out as much as you like. I want to hear all the things.
Well, I'll start with talking about the things I love about type. So the thing I love most is that it helps me to understand people who are different from me. If I know that other people make judgments using different criteria, or if other people prefer a different kind of more flexible or more structured approach to life, then I can know how to work with them in a more effective way and not get on their nerves and have a strong relationship. It also helps me to understand myself better, because sometimes people just beat themselves up constantly because they can't do something. Like, I can't do something well that you could do. And before I knew about type, I might be like, wow, Denzel is so good at extroverted feeling as an ENFJ. Why can't I be that powerful like him? Well, I should just try to be like him. And while I think it's really good to try to work out things that you don't necessarily do naturally, I think it's type is a really good way for us to recognize our own strengths, because sometimes we don't even see the things that we are naturally good at. Sometimes we're kind of blind to them because it's just so automatic. And we see what other people are good at and we're like, wow, I wish I could be like them. And then we beat ourselves up when we can't match them on their level. So type can help us to understand other people. It can help us to have more empathy for their weaknesses. It can help us to recognize their strengths more. That's another thing is, just like sometimes I want to be like you. It's like be like you syndrome. There's a lot of people who are like, I want to be like that person or that person. There's also the be like me syndrome where we're like, oh, why, I could be like, why isn't Denzel like me?
Right.
Like, why is he like so focused on his relationships, but he's not getting his job done? I'm not saying you do that. I'm just saying as an example, why is he not doing extroverted thinking things, which is how I operate more. And so I could be looking down on someone else because they're not operating like I am. And if I think all people are exactly the same fundamentally, then it can make me feel much more judgmental of other people.
Yeah.
And so for me, personality type is very much about understanding others and having more empathy for them, as well as understanding ourselves and having more empathy for ourselves, and also learning how to play to our strengths more effectively instead of wasting time on trying to be like someone else, putting more bulk of our energy into things that we naturally do well.
Yeah.
While making little bits of time to work on the things that are our weaknesses. Because I don't think we should just be like, well, I can't do, maybe I'm a feeler, I can't do thinking well, so I'm just not even going to bother.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because then that's an unhealthy side of type.
Yeah.
But it can also help us to be like, you know what? Maybe you're an ENFP and you had ISTJ parents. And you're like, why can't, everyone's criticizing me because I can't be like the ISTJ mom, my ISTJ mom. Knowing about type can help you to realize, no, I'm a perfectly wonderful ENFP.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that I love most about type.
Yes.
Just in a nutshell, that's what makes it so important to me and what inspired me to create my site, and what I love about talking to other people like you who dedicate so much of their lives to helping people find their best fit type.
Yeah, and I'm totally in line with everything that you said. I think especially as a life coach who uses type predominantly in my coaching, that's like the biggest thing where it's like, okay, you as an ESFP, like I've had someone who like really, like an ESFP who really admired this other person and how they were going about something, and that person was an ENTJ. And it's like they were trying to go about things in the same way that ENTJ was doing it. And I was like, you can keep on doing it that way. Like, like no one's stopping you, and you might be able to get from point A to point B doing that. But there's a more natural way that you'd be able to get from point A to point B in a way that's like different from how this other person's doing it. Do you mind if I show you? Do you mind if I help you unlock that? It's like more natural, more smooth, all of that, and you could still get the same results, but with like less uphill, kind of climb. And when I helped her with that, like it helped her so much. And I feel like a lot of people feel like type like boxes them and it like keeps them, like I said, you can continue to do it like that if you want. You're not boxed. Like if you want to do it quote unquote the harder way, that's fine. But if you want to do it in a more like natural way that suits you, then you can do that. Just like the ENTJ, if it was the other way around, would have had a harder time doing things the way the ESFP was doing it, even though they share the same functions. And so I really like being able to help people to tap into how, God wired their mind so they'll be able to like move forward in the fashion that, best suits them, and also allow other people to become the best version of who they are. Like my ISFP wife. If I kind of like, had the like, why is she not like me type of syndrome thing, that would be a problem because, she's very strongly FI. And if I just, kept on looking at her, and, well, why doesn't she do this that way? And boom, boom. Why isn't she like more like that? Why is she like, like all of these things? And that would be a big issue. And I would keep on trying to like change that to become more like me. I think probably something's wrong with her. Or if she, was to look at me as like, oh, well, he's such an FE user. Why does he do things this way? Or why does he do that? It could be very easy for me to now all of a sudden be like, you know what? Maybe there is something wrong with me. Why do I focus so much on my relationships instead of like what my values are and how I feel and blah, 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 And so that could make me now operate in a way that's not natural to me. And I feel like type gives you an avenue to be able to explore more of like who you are, like whether or not like a lot of people are like wondering, oh, is it like really real? Is it scientific? Whatever it might be. as a profiler, I see people come to me all the time who like they'll literally say things like, yeah, my mom or my brother watches your channel and they wanted me to get a profiling session or whatever this is called, and they don't know anything about type. And then I'm like, okay, and then I do a profiling session with them, and it's like, I'll ask them a question like, so what's something that's very obvious to you, but then not very obvious to other people? Something that's very obvious to other people, not very obvious to you. And then they'll say the most stereotypical things for their type at times, like, oh man, something that's very obvious to me is like, when people are not making logical sense, like they're lying to themselves and like all of these weird social constructs they make, and like they're deceiving themselves in this way, and boom, it's just so whatever. It's like, okay, interesting. And what's not very obvious to you? Oh man, like making friends, like or maintaining relationships, and I'm like, interesting. And then before you know it, by the end of the session, you are what we call an ISTP. Let me explain why that is. And it's like, after they become aware of these things and I coach them, it's like, just because it's hard for you to like maintain relationships doesn't mean you're going to be forever sucking at it. You're not boxed into ISTP. Now you can learn how to better your relationships, because FE, wherever it is in the stack, is always going to work with TI. And so now I can help you to unlock more of, not being that stereotype. You can become what Jung called individuated. So I think that I use type to actually really help unlock people and help see the nuance in people. Like there was a time that I profiled like 4 INFPs in the same day. And they were all different, but I could see how they were all using the same function stack. And they were all, like, that's what makes them an individual. So I love being able to see the individuality in type, even like in fictional characters. These characters can all behave differently, but they're all still under the umbrella of whatever. And then looking at other ENFJs, like, oh, I might not act like them. It's like, oh, that's cool. I never saw FE used in that way. I have FE. Let me take that, and then, I could help them with, a different way that I might use FE that they might have not tapped into, or even like NI. So yeah, I'm totally with you there. But yes, now let's get into the things that have bothered you about the ways that people use type.
Well, first of all, I love everything you said. I think it's really important. I mean, once people know their type, they can, like you said, they can, if they find other people that type, or even other people who have similar types, it's like, oh, I like the way you did that. I can kind of like absorb that into my way of doing things, because it should be fairly easy. What I don't like about type is there's several things. One is when it becomes a way for people to think they're better than other people.
Yes.
There's a lot, you would think in the personality type community that people would be very empathetic to others, because when you get trained as an MBTI practitioner, one of the things they're really strong on is that there's no good or bad type. Mm-hmm. There's no good or bad type. There's no better or worse type. There's no smarter or stupider type. And you would think that people who get really into type would absorb that and really be fascinated by learning about the other people. Mm-hmm. But a lot of what happens is this kind of us versus them culture in the type community. A while ago, and I don't know how prevalent it is still today, but it was like the intuitive bias. Yeah. Intuitives are so much deeper, and they're so much more intelligent and so much more profound and creative than sensing types. And sensing types are just so shallow and boring, or things like that. And they would put all these things on sensing types that it's like, well, maybe you feel that way. Mm-hmm. But maybe they feel like you are, and also that's missing the whole point of type. We need people who have all the different functions in order for our world to operate in an effective way. I mean, can you imagine if the whole world was ENFJs? It would be crazy.
It'd be a great place. Okay.
I mean, we have to have everyone, and there are things about everyone that make them really special. And when people are working to the best of their type, they're really, you'll be impressive. No matter what your type is, you're going to be impressive. Yeah. So for me, I really don't like it when it becomes us versus them, or it becomes we're better, they're not. These personality types are smarter, these aren't as smart. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Type superiority and type cliques and insults being hurled at other types, and even stereotyping to an unhealthy degree. You know, INFPs are just crybabies, you know, or ENTJs are just mean dictators, you know, stuff like that. That is not how type is supposed to be used, and it results in a lot of people who feel like ostracized, or they feel like, oh no, I got ESFJ, now people are like, oh, I know all about you.
Right. Yeah.
And even in real non-internet life, you could go up to someone maybe at work and they're like, oh, what's your personality type? And you're like, oh, I'm an ISFJ, and they're like, oh, ISFJ, I heard about them. Like,
right.
Yeah, they're the ones that are like, they don't like change, and they're all like, oh, I don't think maybe I won't pursue a friendship with this person.
It's almost like zodiac signs. Oh, you're a Scorpio.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that to me is really frustrating. So that's one thing. Yeah. Another thing is when people make everything about type. So, you know, there's a lot more to a person. Type is just one of the many lenses through which we can understand people. But there's a lot more to people than just, here's your personality type, and that's everything. Every decision you make as an ENFJ is going to be about feeling, and you're always going to be super extroverted, and you're always going to be like, you know, and they start analyzing every single thing you do as a type-related thing. Right. Or they think, oh, because you're a feeler, you're not going to be very smart. Like, that gets thrown around a lot. Feelers aren't smart, or thinkers aren't kind. There's all these kind of logical leaps that people make with it because of a misunderstanding of the system.
That's why I drink smart water, by the way.
Yeah. I'm over here with the dumb Aquafina water, like, because I don't care about smarts.
You're ENTJ, you don't have to.
It just comes so naturally. I don't need the water.
This is not an endorsement for smart water or Aquafina. We're going.
Yeah, so it really bothers me when people do that because there are so many other things. A lot of people who are into typology also appreciate the Enneagram system. So your Enneagram type can make you, you know, if you are an ENTJ 3 versus an ENTJ 8, you're going to look very different. An ENTJ 3 can be maybe very charming and very like, they like to be friendly and engaging and dynamic. An ENTJ 8 might also want to be those things sometimes, but there's more of a hunger. They might be more quick-tempered. They might have more of a desire for like power. Right. And on top of Enneagram, there's scientific differences. Yeah. You know, like if someone's gone through severe trauma in their life, maybe they have had like excessive amounts of cortisol running through their body for a long time, and people who've gone through a lot of trauma, they are it's harder for them to retain, like their short-term memory can be more difficult for them to maintain. And so some people who try to make everything about type, they're like, oh, this person's can't be an introverted sensor because they have a bad memory. They've made some kind of leap that's like, you know, because some people think introverted sensing is all about memory. Right. And like, if you're an introverted sensor, you're going to have an amazing memory. And that's actually kind of not exactly true. They're tied to, like, they are interested in things that they've had past experience with, positive past experience. And then they try to recreate that. Yeah. But if you are typing someone and you're like, oh, they have a bad memory, so they can't be an SJ. Right. Like, maybe they just have a bad memory because they spent a lot of time on TikTok. Right. Or maybe they had some trauma in their life, which is, you know, causing all that cortisol to course through their body, and it's making it harder for them to maintain their short-term memory. And the memory is even, if anything, more about impressions. That's how I see it. It's like, it's not even like, it's like fixated on like one specific thing, or replicating something like, oh, I remember that, or this left an impression on me, so I'm trying to replicate it in a sense. But it's not like I remember every single thing that's happened to me in my entire life, but it's like what things have left impressions on me that kind of create what I then try to replicate in a way. I think that's more of an accurate way of looking at introverted sensing. Like, they can have good memory, but that's not all that it is. It's more of like using the impressions that could be likened to memories to replicate something, or to be able to identify something from their past that they've post-processed. So yeah, it's just adding more nuance to like how a function is viewed, but yeah. Exactly. You know, and you can find a lot more about introverted sensing probably on your videos as well. I know that's just one of the 8 functions, and we're kind of only like glossing over it here, but Yeah, so science plays a part. I mean, thinking female types are going to look different than thinking male types. If you look at, psychology through the ages, and there's even, we're doing this kind of spur of the moment, so I can't give you all the signs right now, but females of humans, as well as female chimpanzees and many other animals, are more affiliative by nature. And females tend to be very focused on like nurturing. And that's part of how we're wired, because we're wired to be mothers, and I'm not saying everyone has to be a mother, but we are. So there's certain biological and scientific differences between how females respond. A female thinker will look versus a male thinker. So you might be like, oh, that girl can't be INTJ because look at her, taking care of people, or looking after her children and prioritizing them. Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. And also, just like we don't want to make type about everything, I know I said this before, but thinkers can be very kind and empathetic, and feelers can be very intelligent. And so a lot of people, they look at these dichotomies, like if you're an extrovert, you're going to be talking all the time. You're the life of the party. You don't have any depth. You're just like blah, blah, blah all the time. If you're an introvert, maybe you're like socially reclusive and shy, and like but you're deeper than everyone else. And so there's all these stereotypes and these extremes that people draw from those letters, thinker, smart, feeler, nice, but kind of flaky, So that's where things get really dangerous, and type becomes dangerous instead of helpful. And you start using it as a weapon, that's when it's dangerous. Like, oh, my husband, he's such a ESTP. My husband's an ESTP, so I'll just use him as an example. Like, he can't think deeply to save his life. I'm not even going to bother talking to him about like my deep concepts that are so much more profound than anything he'd ever come up with, because he's an ESTP, so he won't like have any interest. So once you start using it as a weapon, or using it as a way to box people in, to limit them, to demean them, then it starts becoming dangerous. And then that's where you get a lot of people who they're like, I don't want anything to do with this. Get me out of this community. I don't want any part in this.
100%. I fully agree with everything that you said. I think that the biggest thing that I try to do on my channel is, I believe that type is an algorithm that whenever I see one function and where it's strong at here, then I'm like, okay, so then how does it keep all of the other functions like equal? Because I do believe every single type is equally great in their own ways. Every single function is equally great in their own ways. So when I see things like, oh, for example, like FI is very deep and then FE is like very shallow and stuff like that, then it's like from, a binary or, like two-dimensional way of viewing it, then it's like, oh, yeah, that seems about right. But then, as I've gotten to know more, then it's like, wait, I think that FE is also really deep, in the sense that FI is observing the nuance in motivations and values, in how they feel in the human experience, the emotions, stuff like that. Whereas FE is very deep in the sense of how it's looking at the nuance of interpersonal dynamics and, sociograms and things of that nature. And so, and then, when you look at like, SE seems really like great in this way, then now like, okay, well, how is ME also just as great, but in its own way? So I'm always like trying to like find ways to like make sure that everything's like equal, even when I'm explaining certain personality types in my profiling sessions. Then I'm like, oh, okay. When I'm explaining the type, then I try to make sure that they don't feel like their type is better than anyone else's or worse than anyone else's type. So I really think that it's such a great thing to like keep in mind, that every personality type is equal. That's a big thing. It's an algorithm. Whenever you feel like one is starting to look better than the other, then you have to find a way to even out the playing field, because that's just how the math works. So I think that when people start to have like some type of superiority with their type, then that's how you know like you're not actually viewing the types correctly. Like INFJs, oh yeah, we're the most rare, which, if you go read Susan's article on, the rarest personality types, that is actually not the case anymore, according to recent studies. But it doesn't even matter at the end of the day, because it's like, at the end of the day, whether you're rare or not, like, again, every personality type is equally great. And if you're going to learn about type, you should be learning how each type is great in their own way, and how to continue to use typology to be able to help other people, and to help yourself, like, have a better relationship with yourself and a better relationship with other people. And then I think, like, just like you said with the second thing, I feel like, when people make everything about type, that is also really annoying. Like, I've intentionally tried to not make this channel a MBTI channel, because I know that if I made like every video like ENFJ explains this, ENFJ explains this, ENFJ explains this, then I'd probably get like more subscribers and all that. But then that would also like try to like force everything into like an ENFJ box. And I think that what I try to do on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, wherever, is I put it right out there that I'm an ENFJ. And as soon as I put that out there that I'm an ENFJ, then I kind of am providing you a window to look at my life. And now if I'm tweeting something like, I was eating this donut, and then all of a sudden I saw the circle in the middle, and it started making me think about, sometimes we can have such a sweet life, but then it's really hollow in the inside. And what does this mean? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say anything like, this must be NI and yada, yada, yada with all the FE around. Like, you can read it, and if you understand type, then maybe you can think that and quote unquote project that. And that's fine. I don't mind that. But I don't really like saying like, this is FE thing right here. Like, if I say like, so today I was taking care of all these people, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say something like, so this is just my FE, because then, someone like you might come and say something like, oh, well, I'm an ENTJ, and like, I did this too. Some things are just human things to do. And so it's more of like, type is seeing patterns. So I like to just let people know my best fit type is ENFJ. And now whatever I say, whatever I put out there, I'm not going to try to fit into an ENFJ mold, because whatever I do, I'm still ENFJ. So at the end of the day, like, I don't have to prove anything to anyone about my type. I'm just going to be me, and you can view an ENFJ in their natural realm as I continue to work on myself, as I continue to grow, all of that. But when you make like every single thing about type, like, oh, wait, why do you listen to that kind of music? Like, aren't you supposed to be like FE? Or like, wait, why didn't you? It's like, well, I don't know. You tell me. I am FE, so I'm just gonna continue to be myself always, and like, I'm not gonna try to fit into what an ENFJ is supposed to look like, because I am an ENFJ. However, I will try to develop myself as an ENFJ, which I think is different. It's not trying to fit into what an ENFJ should look like, but it's rather trying to continue to unlock all the different ways, all the different levels of FE and NI and even SC and TI, and that's becoming the best version of myself, a more advanced quote unquote ENFJ, but in the way that Denzel Mensah does it. So I think that I really like that idea of like not viewing everything through type, because there are so many things that are just human experiences. There are so many things that are just like, you have children, and again, like, you've studied psychology, not just, from a typology standpoint and everything, but you've read so many books and written so many articles and everything on it for years, but you've also studied psychology from just like neurology standpoint and everything, like neuroscience standpoint and stuff. And it's like, this is actually attachment style. This is actually just stuff about children. This stuff about like trauma, all of that. This is a chemical thing, and it has nothing to do with type, and it should not be applied there. And I really appreciate that about you. And I feel like this is some stuff that more people should become aware of, because type is still helpful. And I want to say that again, type is still very helpful. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just know when and where to use it, and become more cognizant of when you're like using type too much, or like you're applying it in the wrong situations. Like, oh, wait, you're a sensor. Why are you talking about these things? It's like, we all are sensors and we're all intuitives. We all are feelers and we're all thinkers. You know, when you bring that up, we're all extroverted and we're all introverted. We all have like everything because we are human beings. So don't tighten people up and box them. I do appreciate the idea for accuracy. Like if somebody's is not an INTJ, but they're like, yeah, well, you know, like, and they keep on trying to insist, like, but I am an INTJ. I do think that there should still be like some accuracy, you know, that's going on so that we can keep our data and information like clean. But again, humans are complex. And so, you know, I'm not always going to be quick to just say mistype, but, you know, like, yeah, like, hopefully, I don't even know how to finish explaining that thought. But like, all I'll say is that there is a level of accuracy that I believe should be involved with like understanding like someone's best fit type and the patterns and everything like that. But at the same time, like there's also like an understanding too that should be involved with like knowing that we are just humans and we can act different ways at different times. There are smart, intelligent, intellectual sensors. There are also intuitives that can be very sporty and, you know, capable in certain ways. And yeah, that's stuff that we should gain more nuance and understanding, not only of just type, but human beings in general.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned like the importance of accuracy, but also not being too quick to shout out mistype. Because I think in the type community, I've seen that also a lot where people are like, oh, you aren't this.
Yeah.
And ultimately, even if you really believe that of somebody, nobody knows, like, it's not another person's place to say, this is what type you are. Like, when I did my MBTI certification, that was one of the ethical guidelines that they really hammered down with us is, it's not my job to say to you, you're an ISFJ. It's my job to say, here are the different preferences, and these are the preferences you showed a strong tendency towards.
Right.
Does this feel right to you? And maybe here's some materials, you know, you underline the parts that resonate with you.
Yeah.
So as you know, that way you're putting the power in the other person's hands.
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity to decide for themselves if it's the best fit type. When we
Yes.
all are in the type community going, no, you can't be this because of that, and you can't be that because of that. It's really condescending and
Very
really,
much so.
really arrogant for us to assume that, you know, maybe sometimes even over a few quick exchanges on Twitter or something, we're like, oh, that person's not that because that type would never say that.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're all thinkers and feelers. We all use all 8 cognitive functions.
Yeah.
There are some people out there who are like, oh, you don't use the 4 cognitive functions that aren't in your primary functions deck. We use all of them. We couldn't function in the world without them.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and sometimes it's good to play around with it a little bit, you know, sometimes even like, I know we were talking earlier today, you're like, sometimes I like to play around with the idea of being an ESTP a little bit, you know, just kind of mess around with it. And like, sometimes for me, say I have like, I don't know, a lot of tasks to do that are very like, logistical. I might really be like, I'm going to go into ESTJ mode today. I'm going to focus on like the logistics. I'm going to focus on like, I don't know, organizing concrete things the way an ESTJ type would really thrive doing that.
Right.
Like, don't limit yourself. Don't box yourself in. Like, yeah, if you're having, you know, make time to play to your strengths. If you're an introvert, make time to be alone. If you're an extrovert, make time for social connection or, you know, just interacting with the external world more. But play around with it. Like, have fun with it. Type should be fun. Like, I want people to find the joy in it.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, I'm an INTJ, so the only expression I make is the death glare. You know what I mean? Like have fun with it. And that's sometimes what I do. I'm like, you know what? I'm really going to get into my like INFP self today, even though I'm not an INFP. And I know some people would really criticizing me for saying that. They're like, you don't use extroverted intuition. You can't play around with being an INFP. That's not possible. You know, but like, absolutely. Like, I'm going to go read some poetry and get creative and like, I don't know, cry in a movie. Okay. INFPs are not crybabies. This is just, you know, kind of an example. Like, you play around with the functions. Play around with, experimenting with different sides of yourself. Have fun with it. Find the joy in it. Find the joy in appreciating and recognizing other people's unique gifts that they bring to the world. Imagine if Lord of the Rings, I don't know if you've seen that, but imagine if it was like all just your type.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they never get the ring to fire, I don't know, the fires of Mount Doom or whatever. They never do it.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't have that team. Like, it was so important that they had Aragorn, I think he's an ISTJ or ISTB. They needed him. They needed all the different people with their unique gifts. But they also needed Frodo, the INFP, with all the integrity and conviction. And so that's how life is. Like, let's go out, and I know it's going to sound very extroverted feeling of me, but let's go out and actually appreciate people for the gifts that they bring to the world.
Yes.
And not limit people, thinkers. Like, I'm a thinker, and one of the things that kept me from thinking I was a thinker for a long time is but I'm a nice person.
Yeah, so nice.
I care about people, and I'm a mom, and I like making people feel good. But then I learned, the way that I like making people feel good is through extroverted thinking ways.
Yeah.
That leads me to another point. Don't rush to figure out your type. Don't feel like you have to have it figured out in 5 minutes, or even after an hour-long conversation. Don't feel like you have to have it all figured out. It can take years sometimes, especially if you're dealing with a lot of trauma or attachment issues or all kinds of things that can muddy the waters a little bit and make it hard to know your true self.
Yeah.
So don't rush through the process. And also, if you can, work with Denzel, because he's trained in this and he's really good. He helped me to narrow down my type. He helped my husband to narrow down his type. I even had him type my 16-year-old daughter. And so
lovely. Shout out to Mello.
So talk to somebody who's been trained, but even then, just don't feel like you've got to really rush to label yourself. And then even after you find your best fit type, if you're playing around and you're going through your life and you're like, I'm realizing this maybe wasn't right, it's okay. Don't feel ashamed of it either.
Yeah.
Because I know some people are oh no, I told everyone. I mean, for me, I told everyone I was an INFJ. I wrote content as an INFJ. I had to go and rework a whole bunch of content.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, I'd never written. I tried really hard not to write from here's my life as an INFJ. I just tried to write about type through what I learned about it. But I had to come out and say, I'm not actually an INFJ. I thought I was, but I'm an ENTJ. So there may be people in the type community that give you a hard time, or there may be people in your life who are say demeaning things, but be patient with yourself as you try to figure out what really works best for you. Be patient with yourself as you come to understand type better, or yourself better, or how you interact with other people better. And be patient with other people. Have fun. Find the joy in type. I think that those are some really important things for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Susan, thanks so much for being willing to do this video with me. I feel like it's going to help a lot of people. And I'm also definitely wanting people to know where they can find you. So like I said, psychologyjunkie.com if you want to find Susan. And like I also said, we're working on some things behind the scenes that are going to be coming in 2023. So be on the lookout for that.
Stay tuned.
Yes, check out her YouTube channel. I'm going to have that in the description below as well. Is there anything else that you'd want to shout out for yourself, or
work with Denzel as a coach?
Yes.
But I just want to thank you for inviting me onto your channel. It's always it's an honor. This is the first time I've been on your channel, and it's an honor to be invited here. I think this is a great topic, and I hope everyone starts having fun with type today and is inspired by this. So thank you. For
sure. Thank you all for watching. If you would like to book a coaching or profiling session with me, you can check out denzelmensah.com. You'll find that in the description as well. And I will sit down with you one-on-one and help you to find your best fit type. And yeah, let's just start this journey. Share this with a friend if you believe that it'll help them, and also make sure to reflect on it for yourself first and foremost. But yeah, I think that's about all. And remember, you matter. Done. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and if you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. It actually really helps out my channel a lot so that more people who actually care about what I want to say can actually find me a lot more easier. Also, if you did enjoy it, then maybe you'll enjoy a lot of my other content as well, so be sure to check out some of my playlists where you'll be able to find a lot of my older videos and older content. And last but not least, if you would like any profiling sessions or coaching sessions, be sure to check out denzelmensah.com, where you'll be able to book me and you'll see the rest of my services. But thanks again, and have a great day.